Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm showing you how to do 2 rows of hand-tied extensions. So this is our before canvas and we are adding in 22 inches and 20 inches. Okay, so this is kind of my setup. So obviously I have my bead clamper, my bead opener. I have 2 needles since I'm doing 2 rows, my scissors, my sectioning ring, and then 2 loaded bead loaders. I'm using the color black because her roots are black. And then I just have a couple clips, and then I like to have quite a few little ones just to make sure I have plenty. And then I like the Velcro grippers just to catch all the little flyaways. If there's a lot of pesky flyaways, I like to use a little bit of texture spray or hairspray just to kind of slick those back so that way that we're not pulling on any little baby hairs. And then going in with my black thread. So I always like to keep a hair backstock here at the salon. I don't stock every single color that the brand that I use carries, but I like to have quite a few just so I can make sure that the hair that I'm using matches seamlessly. So the brand that I'm using is called Scottie and Ashton. They are my absolute favorites. The colors I'm going in with are Dark Roast, Number 2, and Praline. I am using these different colors just because it's going to give me the most seamless blend. So once I've chosen my colors, I like to go in and section off exactly where I'm going to put the extensions. I typically always put the bottom row in first. Things just seem to lay a little bit softer and a little bit more comfortably if I do that. I'm not showing you the bottom row, I am just showing you the top just for sake of time, but I've just been going in. I do the waterfall method. You always want to make sure that the beads that you're using match their root color versus the top of the weft, just to make sure that it's going to be blending and hiding as seamlessly as possible. So this is my preferred method. I do a few others, but this one I have found lays the most comfortably and grows out the best, and honestly seems to have like the least amount of problems. Some other methods, depending on their hair type, can deal with more slippage or more tension. This one has honestly been my favorite. I haven't gotten any complaints from it, so this is what I do on most of my clients. So you can see that I have the pink Velcro grippers on things. Those I feel like are a must if you are an extension specialist or just getting into extensions. Those will just help to get all those little flyaways that are so annoying, so that way you're not snagging those little hairs in the bead and ultimately causing some irritation to your client. So when you're placing the hair, there's a few things that you need to be very mindful of. One, even though you have, the colors that match, if you don't place them correctly, it's not going to match. So you need to be thinking through your colors just as much as you're thinking through your placement of your colors. You also want to make sure that from side to side, everything is symmetrically even color-wise. So I all the time will use the exact same colors on both front sides of the head. That way she doesn't have anything that doesn't match perfectly. If you chose colors that are light all the way up to the root and your client has darker roots like mine does, you may want to consider coloring the wefts prior to putting them in. Personal preference, I do think that coloring the wefts outside of the head and individually tends to be easier, and it's like it just makes saturation and the coloring process a lot smoother. If you color it as a whole once it's sewn in, it can work well. Some people prefer that, but in my personal experience, I feel like it is hard to get it seamless, and it is hard to make sure that your saturation is perfectly even. Also, when you are placing your wefts, make sure that everything is being clipped in with a clip. I know that sounds very duh, but make sure that each end of the weft is secured with a clip. That way you don't have any parts of the weft kind of slipping downward, because then you'll have to go in and fix some stitching later on. So the nice thing about the colors I'm using, I have the number 2, which is that solid brown shade. Roots to ends, it is the exact same color. Then I have praline, which is a piano shade. That means that at the very top of the weft, it alternates between a highlight and a low light. And then the color that I'm like draping over the top is the dark roast. That one is the rooted, it's like a rooted soft piano. So if they have darker roots like my girl has, opting for a color that's going to go on the outside that has a root color to it is going to naturally look better and just be softer and be easier for them to hide. When I start the sewing process, I always start on the right side of the head and I gradually move towards the left side of the head. Different sewing patterns can, switch it up so you can start on the left side and move towards the right, but this is how I've always done it and just how my stitching stays in the best. So whichever your method or your stitching method asks for, just follow along with that. Just because I start on the right side doesn't mean that you necessarily have to. Then once everything is sewn in, we do the cutting process. You want to make sure that you are very thoroughly double checking things and adding in lots of texture, layers where need be, and softening areas that need a little bit of softening. The point of adding in extensions, for the most part, is being able to allow your client's hair to become healthier, become longer, and so you want to minimally touch their hair. So if you can notice, I point cutted her ends and I textured through the ends of her hair just to soften that line, but you don't want to go and do any debulking significantly. If you feel like that is what you have to do, odds are you haven't put in enough hair. You need to be density matching your client and not just putting in a few wefts because you think it'll be okay. I always go in and do just very soft slide cutting layers. You do not want to do traditional, you hold your arm up 90 degrees type of a thing. You want everything to be very soft and subtle because you can always add in more layers. It's harder to glue things back on. So we added in 8 wefts. Each weft is about 16.5 grams. So with the length that her hair is, 8 wefts worked perfectly. If her hair was shorter or more blunt, we would have wanted to opt for more hair just to ensure that her ends didn't feel sparse, and that way it looked very intentional and you wouldn't look at her and think, oh, she's definitely got extensions. You also want to remind your client that since this is brand new hair, within the next few washes, the hair will fluff up a little bit. Not to necessarily say that it'll be fuzzy, but it will just feel thicker. So the layers that you're adding in now will seem a little bit more prominent later on after they wash it. So you'd rather start on the minimal side, and when they come in for their move up, have to add in a little bit more than have gotten very scissor happy and chopped off too much. Through the fronts, I always connect where her face framing pieces stop and where her extensions start. I always like to make that a very gradual line, or very soft line, so that way when she curls her hair, she doesn't feel like she has a big disconnect through the fronts and through the back. We also always place the wefts more forward, so that way they fill in the fronts a lot more. You want to have more minimal hair in the front, just so your client doesn't feel like they have, business in the front, party in the back, and it just looks ridiculous, because that is the easiest way to tell if someone has extensions, because they haven't put them far enough forward. Once I finished cutting everything, I always have my client double check, make sure everything with our rows feels good, make sure that nothing is pulling or tugging any way that it shouldn't be. I also have them feel length and layers and tell me if there's any areas that they want to do more with. Then we do the styling process. I'm going in with my 1-inch Babyliss Nano Titanium curling iron. I honestly always recommend a 1-inch curling iron because you can make this as, loose or as tight as you want to, just depending on the size of sections you take. Remember, the bigger curling iron size that you use, the looser it will feel and kind of the more blowout type of a look it will give you. Also, it's important to educate your clients on proper heat styling with extensions. Extensions will hold heat styles better than our hair will. So it's nice to inform them that, they don't have to use 450 degrees on their extensions because it's way too hot. They do not need that. I always recommend using it around 365 to about 385, and that holds it super well. Also, you want to make sure that with each of your clients, especially if they're a new extension guest, that you are sending them home with a hair extension care guide. This is a lifestyle change. They're going to have questions, so go over everything before they leave, but also send them with an aftercare sheet just so they can look back on that so they know how to take care of everything. So now I just brush out the curls. I always throw a little bit of texture spray and a little bit of oil through there just to make it feel really nice and soft. So this is how it turned out. Once again, we did 2 rows of hand-tied extensions from the brand Scottie and Ashton. I will leave their information down below, and you can use my discount code to get $20 off your orders of $200 or more. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.